Hi, hi, hi. Happy Wednesday, everybody. How are you? My gosh, it's super, super rainy and cloudy and gray today. Somehow Zoom is adjusting my lighting because it's so dark in here and I look like I have so much light in here. Thank you, Zoom. Thank you, Zoom filters. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to talk to you today about being fiercely independent and how to work with that, how to work with the blessing of it and the curse of it, if you will, how to work with the shadow of it, but also how to work with this aspect of you that I personally think is the gift for a gift for most of us. So I'm super excited. I'm just going to take one quick second here, it always takes a minute to refresh. I want to make sure if you're live, please say hi. Let me know that you're here. I want to make sure that I'm seeing you and acknowledging you. It's funny. I've had a lot of people respond when I was just promoting this live for this week. I've had a lot of people respond to this topic saying like, that's me, fiercely independent. So let me just state the name of today's title, which is Success Tips for the Fiercely Independent Entrepreneur. So if you are live, say hi, please, please, please feel free to participate, whether you're live or on the replay. I would love to know how this resonates with you. If you're live, what question, well, if you're live or if you're on the replay, what questions you have, what your experience has been as a fiercely independent person, in addition to being an entrepreneur, and what challenges you find, what advantages you find, what disadvantages you find, ways that this plays out for you in life, ways that this plays out for you in business. I'd love to know. Okay, let me just see if I can refresh this. Get you guys live because I'm not seeing you yet. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I'm just going to go ahead and start to introduce this topic. So being independent is not really hard to define. I think there are so many of us that are fiercely independent. And I think what's the blessing, or one of the many blessings and one of the many advantages to being a fiercely independent person, is really that you are a trailblazer. Like a lot of entrepreneurs are very, very independent people. The two naturally go together. Entrepreneurship is, for people who want to innovate and create and go out on their own, right? Like that's the essence of what we're doing here when we have businesses. And it's just naturally attracting those of us who are independent, or as I like to say, fiercely independent, because I think there's a sort of a more extreme version if independence is a continuum, right? What I'm talking about today is the people that are pretty damn independent, like closer to the end of the extreme of that continuum. And I don't mean like, to the point of some mental issue or what have you, but I do think that there are aspects of our personalities that play out in our business. I know that there are aspects of our personalities that play out in our businesses, whether we're paying attention to them or not. And they, in many ways, drive us forward and in many ways slow us down, or in many ways can be our fatal flaw, our tragic flaw. So I want to talk about independence today. And I want to talk about how to make it work for you. Again, I suspect if you're anything like me, and I'm completely a crazily highly independent person, if you're anything like me, it's one of the reasons you chose entrepreneurship. It's one of the reasons why that it seemed like a good idea, because you could do things on your own terms. Working for other people isn't necessarily for the highly independent. And so, hi guys, if you're live, say hi. And so I want to make sure that as we talk about this, I'm setting the stage that I'm not saying that being independent is wrong. I'm not saying that there's anything that we need to do or change. What I am saying is that with any personality type, any thing that any trait that we have in our personalities, there are blessings and curses to it. There's the positive and the negative. There's the advantage and the maybe shadow side. And I'm going to talk about both. So I am highly independent. I'm fiercely independent. It's one of the things that I love about myself. And a large number of my clients are also very, very, very independent. Right? Like attracts like. And there are things this is something that I've been working on for the last couple of years. There are things in my life that I've wanted to change. I've wanted to enhance. I've wanted to make better in my life and in my business, that I've been working on over the last 2 years to allow my independence to come out when it's right time, but then also to, what's the opposite of independence, right? Like community, support, teamwork, partnership, all of those things that in truth, I think most humans need both. They need some sort of individuation, to use a psychology term, and some sort of community and support and give and take, right? And so finding a balance for you, this isn't about, I always say when we're talking about like duality and continuums and extremes, this isn't about finding the 50-50 balance, but finding what's the right balance for you that feels right. I'm always going to err on the independent side. And one of the things that I've noticed in my life and in my business that's been hard for me is to ask for help, is to receive support. I'm actually a really good team player, but it doesn't always mean that I create circumstances for myself to be a part of a team, for example. So enough preface. If you're live, say hi. I would love to know who's here. I'm just going to double check and make sure that the comments are coming through. So a couple of things that I personally think become, hi, Michelle. Hi, Allison. Welcome, welcome, ladies. Good to see you. Keep me posted on how this is resonating. I'd love some participation from those of you who feel that you are also fiercely independent. I'd love to know how this shows up in your life and your business, what questions you have as I'm talking, or even just to make an additional comment. Because I certainly, can have people contribute to this conversation. I don't need to be the only one sharing ideas. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about what's so great about independence. And for those of you who are listening that independence is not your like big fat thing, maybe what you can do is listen to the positives of it, and maybe where are there areas in your life that you can enact more independence. So this really can be for everyone, even if you don't identify as an independent person. I think finding the balance for yourself in this continuum is in some ways something that many of us have to do throughout our lives, right? That if you go back to like I can't not see this from a psychology standpoint. I'm a psych major and I have a master's degree with a sort of focus in psychology. And one of the things that you learn in the basics is that as we grow up, as a kids, part of what we are, doing is both being a part of a family and individuating, right? Becoming an individual. And so there's always a push-pull between me and you, between me doing it my way, and then also having this, as a kid, this family, that unit that I'm also, a member of. And so anyway, listen, take what works for you. So a couple of things that I think is really, really beautiful about independence. Again, I already said, I think a lot of people would never have started a business if they weren't pretty independently minded. I think people who are independent tend to, and this is not a full extreme, but tend to trust themselves, particularly when it comes to big things. I know that in my life, I've made a lot of big moves. I've lived in the States for the majority of my life, except for the last 2 years. But I made a lot of really big moves. I moved from state to state, really just because I wanted to. And then I moved to Honduras 2 years ago. People who are afraid to be alone don't typically do those types of things, right? And I used to say I was a professional mover. So people who trust themselves, again, typically with some of the big stuff, because they just know it's fine, I'll figure it out. I know how to be on my own. I'm comfortable being on my own. It's fine. So those types of things, whatever your thing is, typically doesn't scare you or doesn't scare you enough to hold you back from doing it, right? Entrepreneurs. Independent people are entrepreneurs. Independent people are innovators, creators. They're often the type of person to create a better way of doing something, which gets back to entrepreneurship, innovation. I don't want to do it like all y'all. Let me find my own way and then let me sell that, right? They're trailblazers. They tend to think of things in a different way. They challenge the status quo for sure. They can be rebels. Again, I think they trust themselves with big things in many cases. It doesn't mean that you trust yourself, for everything. I think that's a constant learning curve and journey for people. But I do think that independent people trust themselves to be able to do certain things on their own by themselves because they know they can. They don't need someone else, right? They also tend to not be very needy. And then they also, I think we do things that other people won't do. I'm going to say that again. We do things that other people won't do. And in many times, I think it's that other people can't do or don't want to do. Just to sort of cover that all the different ways you could say that sentence. But I think that we do things that other people won't do because we have that trust in ourselves, or because we know that we can figure it out, or because we see it differently. A lot of independent people are misunderstood because they see things so differently that, other people are just like, what planet are you on, right? And I think there's this people who err on the other side of the spectrum. Again, there's no right or wrong here. It's just where you fall. But I think people who err more on the side of community or groups or support and doing things together, they may or may not step out on their own to start a business or strike out and do something different from the norm, from the mainstream, because maybe that's not their way. That's not the thing that's driving them, but also maybe they don't enjoy doing things on their own. They prefer to do things on from a community or team environment, get a group together and do something, right? So again, no right or wrong. It's just sort of the proclivity that you have towards either one of the extremes. What happens when you, just check, let's see. I've got it. Okay, now I've got the comments in a different slot. So, hi, Michelle. Allison's raising her hand, fiercely independent. Let's see, Michelle says, yes, when I was in the corporate world, I love having a team. However, I feel sometimes that I'm so different. Girl, I feel ya. Because so many others have a deep need to connect and I don't feel that way often. Totally get that. Love that. Love how that plays out for you, Michelle. Thank you for sharing. I realize that I listen to people. However, I really, really don't like people telling me what to do. Oh my God. That's always been one of my big things, Michelle. I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't have a problem talking to someone who knows something that I don't and receiving their guidance. But it's sort of like, for me, I will be triggered if they encourage me or consult with me around doing something versus if they tell me to do something. I feel you, dude. Yeah, Allison says, I don't have the need to connect either. Yeah. So again, can you see already, those of you who are here live, and even if you're listening on the replay, I hope this is helpful and validating for you, because I think this is an aspect of our, sorry, I'm trying to adjust my mouse so that I can see your comments. I think this is an aspect of ourselves that it's really helpful to, for those of us who are independent, to commune about and understand and see and learn to understand ourselves better, and then to work with that. And to, again, there are things that I have no intention of changing in myself around my independence. And there are other things that, whether I have a pain point around it or I'd just like to try something new, there's areas where I'd like to expand more in this community area. So, and again, it's not to say that you can only have one or the other. Most of us have an appreciation for both sides, but the mix and match, the percentage of where we go, the edge that we are on the spectrum is going to be different, right? Okay, ladies, thank you for your comments. Keep me posted here. Okay, so some of the, and one more positive on being independent and fiercely independent, we tend to be bosses, right? That's like what I said about entrepreneurship, but now I'm going to move into the where it can pull you down, where it can not necessarily be your best trait, or where it can be what I like to call your fatal flaw. I think it was Shakespeare was like fatal flaw, tragic flaw, right? I had a lady on Instagram, if you're live, say hi, who said she's a lit teacher and she loved that I called it tragic flaw in my post when I was advertising this live, but that's truly what it is, right? And Shakespeare, there's always the hero, has a personality trait or a tendency towards doing things a certain way that ultimately in all the Shakespearean plays is responsible for their downfall. So that's essentially what I'm talking about here. I don't mean to be dramatic. I don't think that you're going to have a downfall. But again, there's a shadow side to everything. So what are the shadow sides to this? Well, I talked about you can be a boss, like that's great, but you can also be bossy. Right? I think a lot of people in this area can err. And I want to say one other thing, because I'm speaking in generalities. Of course, not all of these things are going to describe everyone. So just because you identify as fiercely independent doesn't mean that everything I'm going to say resonates with you or describes you. So take what feels right and leave the rest. This is intended to be general enough to apply to everybody. And this is based, by the way, on my own experience, the things that I've learned and studied and read about over the years. It's how I see this play out for me in my life and my business, but it's also what I see in my clients. So I'm sharing sort of a compilation of knowledge and information today. So some of the negatives, you can be bossy. Some people are bossy in this area. A little bit of the my way or the highway, because on the one hand, again, the positive is that we can see things differently and like we might be able to find a better way. But on the negative, we might just sort of think that our way is the best way and maybe have a tougher time working with people around that because we just sort of want to effing do it our way and we're just going to do it my way, right? And then that also leads to things like perfectionism. This is actually something that I don't have. And I think I don't know if I'm naturally not a perfectionist, but I had some experiences in my childhood that made me not become a perfectionist. But I think this can happen for those of us who are fiercely independent or people who really feel the need to control, right? And I don't mean control and manipulate other people. I mean, have a hard time delegating to a team member, for example, because they're sort of like, yeah, but are you going to do it right? But are you going to do it my way? Because you're a different person and you might do it wrong. And oh God, right. So those for sure go together. Again, this may or may not describe you, but just take what sounds good, sounds like you. Some people feel lonely and misunderstood in this area, even though they love to strike out on their own and maybe they're good with their alone time and they like being, independent. It doesn't mean that they don't also need people, right? And maybe because they're misunderstood, maybe because they're different in this way, maybe it's harder to find people that resonate with you. It's funny, I had a conversation with a client this week about how those of us who are entrepreneurs, one of the reasons I created this community is because I learned very early on in my entrepreneurial career that not a single person at the time, not a single person in my life was an entrepreneur, understood what the hell I was doing. And I really needed support. I needed to be in an environment where I had peers. I always had peers in school and in corporate, and I really needed that community and that, okay, am I crazy? Is this a good risk to take? Like, I didn't have anybody I could talk to or even just like sit in a space of other entrepreneurs. And so that's the way that I started my business. The first 2 years, I was primarily marketing myself from using networking, in-person networking meetings, meeting other entrepreneurs. That was my primary focus for marketing my first 2 years. I've since moved to primarily marketing myself online. But that was, for me, what I needed to balance out my independence. And again, if you're feeling, so anyway, what I was saying to my client this week was, things, when we do something and we don't have anyone else that's doing that thing, it can make us feel weird. It can make us feel like we don't trust ourselves. We don't have a community. We don't have an industry. We don't have someone to talk about. It's one of the reasons I started this Facebook group. I think community is huge for small business owners. And it can feel lonely, right? So that's, again, that's one of the reasons I started this group. Okay, let me just check and see what you guys are saying. Guidance is different than dictating. Yes. Allison also doesn't like to be told what to do. Oh my God, you guys are my people. Okay. So again, other ways that this can play out, my way or the highway. I think I said that already. And then the other way that I've seen it, and I've seen this for sure in myself, is people who have walls up. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're subtle, but and people may have walls up for many different reasons. I think a lot of empaths have walls up because they're afraid to be flooded by other people's energy, other people's emotions, right? So walls can come from lots of different things, but sometimes people who are independent may have walls up they may not know, because they're just kind of like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I don't need you, right? And I think sometimes those of us, those people who are in our lives, friends, family, romantic partners, what have you, sometimes may misconstrue our independence and our lack of neediness for deciding that we don't need them at all, right? We don't need any sort of support, because probably we don't ask for help, right? Which is a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. And maybe it's harder for us to develop intimacy in our relationships. I'm not talking sexual, but like just from the standpoint of being intimate with other people and asking for things and supporting each other. That doesn't always come as easy to independent people because they've just kind of got it. And if you have an air of this, you know, sort of I got it vibe, then people don't think you need them. And then they may not be inclined to, I don't know, include you in something or invite you to something or ask if you need help when you're sick, right? So however that plays out, it can play out in so many different ways. But I do think that some of us have walls up or walls up in certain circumstances that may not be open to receiving help, open to receiving community, open to a different way of doing things. Okay, let me know how this is resonating, and then we're going to move on to sort of where this comes from. I'm going to talk, I've got a lot of stuff to say today. Let's see. Michelle says, I grew up, let me click on this. I grew up feeling like I needed to be perfect. My parents kept telling me I was a role model for my 4 younger siblings. Yep. I'm also a firstborn. High expectations at home, then working in a corporate career where I was responsible for getting great results when, oops, it popped, when regulatory and accreditation organizations came into our hospital. I was a director of healthcare. Oh, interesting. Quality and patient safety. I also beat myself up a lot because quality is so important to me. Yep. You guys are so much alike. They're commenting on how much alike they are. I love this. Oh my gosh. Okay. So again, I'm hoping that everybody live and on the replay is seeing the camaraderie, seeing the community, because that's sort of what I'm talking about today, in the other side of independence, right? And again, I'm being really extreme when I talk about it, but I think it is important to talk about all levels, because the more we err on the side of independence, the more we move away from the side of community. And it's important to have some sort of balance that makes sense for you. Because here's what happens, guys. We don't get support. We don't get the support we need. That comes from a million different reasons. We don't ask for it. We don't receive it well. Maybe we're micromanagers, right? I'm being all dramatic, but these are all the different ways that I've seen it play out in life and business. And when you don't ask for help and you don't receive help well, or you let somebody help you, but then you tell them how to freaking do it all the whole time, that doesn't encourage you to get more support. Doesn't encourage the other person to want to help you. And nobody is an island. That's the truth. Nobody is an island. And if you are a complete island, you're probably not happy. you're probably missing something in your life, in your business. And I want to actually share something. There's a coach that I've followed for many, many years, and she just celebrated becoming a millionaire. Her coaching business has gone from multi six figures, and she's now made the $1 million mark, cash, not revenue, but cash, this year. And so she was celebrating that. And one of the things that she did in her celebration talk was she started thanking everybody that got her and her business to this point. And she made a point, and I'm getting chills right now because it is so, so, so fucking true. Nobody's a self-made millionaire. That term, self-made millionaire, self-made anything, it's a great term. Those of us who are independent really kind of love it, right? Do you know anyone who's a millionaire who's actually self-made, right? I know a lot of times when people say that, they mean they had no dollars when they started, right? They're not, people whose parents gave them an inheritance and then they created more millions out of that, right? But the truth is, like, that is a misnomer. That's misleading. And it encourages those of us who think we can fucking do everything by ourselves. It encourages us to think that either we have to, or we can, or we get to keep doing it that way, or that's the only way, whatever it is. Being a martyr is not always a good call. Nobody's a self-made millionaire. Why are we trying to do it all by ourselves, right? Which brings me to the other piece that happens with highly independent people is we tend to do too much. May or may not mean we're working too many hours. It may or may not mean that we're workaholics, but we tend to, in business, take on a lot and take on a lot for ourselves, whether we have a team or not. Most highly independent people that I work with, I'm always having to say, great, can your team do that? Yeah, yeah. And your team can do that. And what about, can you delegate that, right? Because our first instinct is, yeah, I'm just going to go do it, right? But we can do it so much better and so much easier when we have the support, the right support in place. Okay. I'm just going to check for the comments, and then I'm going to move on to my next point. Let's see. Yes, nobody is a self-made millionaire. That's Lacey Seitz said that. Okay, so giving credit where credit is due. She is amazing. Okay, where does this come from? Okay, you guys can all go back to your childhood and decide for yourself where this comes from. I think most of us come in this way in large part. I'm a very big believer in nature and nurture. I know that, and actually I'll tell you a silly little story about myself. So I grew up in the South, and when I first learned how to talk, both of my parents had very, very thick accents, and I not just learned how to talk, but I came out with an even greater, stronger Southern accent than either of my two parents. In fact, my next door neighbor used to come over just to listen to me talk because I was so Southern. No, shout out to all my Southern people. I used to have a Southern accent. You will hear it come out now and then. I've just moved around so much, and that my accent has just become a blend of wherever I am. But I used to speak very Southern drawl, especially as a little kid. And when I was like a year and a half, 2 years, however old you are when you first learn how to talk, my parents told me that one of my favorite sayings, something I said all the time when they would, let's say they're helping me tie my shoe or helping me do something, and I would say, nope, I do it myself. Right? I do it myself. And my mom always says, and so you were, right? That's just how I always have been. I came in that way. And so that's nature and nurture. There are things that I experienced. I had actually a really lovely childhood, but we all go through traumas, and I'm going to put it in quotation marks because it might mean that you had some sort of neglect or abuse, but anything in childhood can be a trauma. I want to share one of mine that doesn't sound like a trauma, right? But when I was in first grade, I had, this is one of the reasons I'm not a perfectionist. I had this streak of getting 100 on all my spelling tests. Nobody told me that I was getting 100 on all my spelling tests. Nobody, noticed that I had never missed a single thing on any of my tests. I just noticed it. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Spelling's really easy for me, blah, 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 right? And then one day I misspelled orange and I got a -1 on my paper instead of 100%. I was freaking devastated. I was so upset with myself, right? And I went through this that's one of my childhood traumas, right? I'm laughing because it's not a trauma, right? But it is because I, as a child, made sense of it and used it to create and formulate different thought processes and belief systems that then inform the way that I live my life, right? So all of us in childhood, I don't care how perfect and vanilla your life is, we've all had some element of trauma, usually more than one. If you've had big, obvious ones, you know it. So usually there's a phrase out there or a quote out there that I've heard a million times that says, and I agree with this, that says that extreme independence is a trauma response. Because here's what happens for those of us who are independent. There's like healthy independence, and then just like anything, we can move into a space of taking it too far, moving it to the extreme, letting it go too far. And one of those ways is we can, so oftentimes most of us had 1 to 17 things happen to us when we were kids, where the meaning that we made of it, again, it doesn't matter really what happened, it does. And if you have traumas of any sort in your life, I highly recommend that you work with a coach or a healer or a therapist to support you in that, because it's life-changing. But what happens is our little child brains make sense of certain events, and then we make decisions and thought processes around that. So like maybe you were left home alone a lot as a kid. And so you learned and made sense of it that you had to do things yourself because nobody was around to do them, right? I know a lot of kids who were, latchkey kids, their parents worked and they had to come home and cook dinner, right, for themselves. So maybe if that's you or something like that, what happened in your brain, you made sense of the fact that like nobody was around to help you. So you had to do it for survival. This happens with people who have suffered real serious neglect and abuse. They've been in survival mode as children, and they learn and decide that the only way to do it is to only trust themselves, because other people can't be trusted, right? Maybe there's adults in your life that we thought we could trust our mom, and then, she did bad things. So whatever it is, we make sense of the situation by deciding that maybe other people can't be trusted, maybe other people aren't reliable, other people can't do it in a way that actually serves your needs. That's another thing that I think a lot of people experience, is their parents, well-meaning, try to support their needs and meet their needs as children, but they maybe are a different personality type or different temperament or whatever than their parents. And so their parents are trying to support them in the way that they would want to be supported, but the way the kid wants to be supported is something different. And so they don't get their needs met, not because they didn't have good parents, not because the parents weren't trying, but just because their style didn't happen to work for the kid, and the kid maybe didn't feel like their needs were met. If you don't feel like your needs are met, you oftentimes will create a thought process, a belief system around, I can't get my needs met if I don't meet them myself. And so then this becomes perpetuated, right? This is where I came in independent, and then I became even more independent by the childhood experiences that I had that sort of perpetuated that in a more extreme way. Does this make sense? Let me know. Let me check on the comments, and then I'll keep going here. Major trauma late in my life, I got rehabbed. This was a reason I went back to be a certified neuro renewal life coach. I'm in the masterclass right now. Pain to Evolve. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So now let's come out of the negative and go to the positive. This is your gift too, right? We talked in the beginning all about how being an independent person has probably moved you into entrepreneurship, probably got you out of situations that you would not be thriving in. I know that's one of the reasons that I felt brave enough to leave corporate. this is something that it's important to lean into this aspect of ourselves and use it. I think I said in my post, like, use your powers for good. This is also where your genius is, right? This is where your genius is. And it can be the Shakespearean tragic flaw. I'm going to give you an example, and this is one of my favorite. Say what you want to say. He is not a perfect man about Michael Jordan, but I've been tracking him my whole life. I was a huge basketball fan. I went to the University of North Carolina, and I've been sort of obsessed with him and his genius. Because of his genius, I was obsessed with him. Also, he's cute, and he was up on a poster on my wall when I was a kid. But I've been obsessed with his genius for quite a long time because he was so beautiful to watch play basketball. Michael Jordan, one of the things that was both his genius, his magic, what made him go, but also could have been in certain moments his shadow side, was his competitiveness. He was so competitive. He would challenge people to some sort of competition, whether it was basketball, whether it was, he loved to gamble. When he was a kid, I don't remember where he fell in the birth order, but he had a bunch of brothers, and he would always like challenge his older. I know he certainly wasn't the oldest, because he would challenge his older brothers to basketball games, baseball games, like, come on, like, I can beat you. And he was such a shit talker, right? Like, he was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I've watched a bunch of interviews. If you haven't seen his Netflix, it's not his Netflix special. If you haven't seen the Netflix special about the Bulls and you're interested in team or basketball, or how great things become greater, but also there's a whole dynamic story to what happened with the Bulls in the 90s. Highly recommend it. I can't think of what it's called anymore, but one of the things that they say in the interviews for this show is that, you know, somebody on the court would tell him, like, you know, y'all are going to lose. And he would like obsess about this one person that told him they were going to lose, and blah, blah, blah. For like the next 3 days, he would be like, no, we have to win, because not because we have to win this game, but because I have to prove this person wrong, right? He was obsessive about it. Can you see how that could go to the extreme and maybe not be healthy and maybe not be supportive? What are the ways in which that didn't work for him? Well, he was a big gambler. I don't know if he ever lost anything. I think I'm speaking about him like he's in the past. He is a big gambler. I don't know if he's ever lost, you know, enough money to make it a problem for him, but I know that's a space where he potentially could shift. He got a lot of flack in the 90s for not ever passing the ball to his teammates, right? Never passing the ball. So oftentimes they'd give him the ball and like, no, he'd be like, fuck it, I'm the only one, right? I'm going to be the only one who can make this basket. I'm the best shooting. And I don't know if I don't know if I can trust these guys. So I'm just going to dribble and maybe or maybe not get there, right? So can you see, but the motivation, and he was one of the famous stories about Michael Jordan. Did I say Michael Jackson? Michael Jordan. One of the famous stories about him is that he was cut from his JV basketball team. He didn't make the team. It's one of the biggest drivers he ever had in his whole life, because basically somebody told him he couldn't do it. And he was like, oh, no, right? Came back with a vengeance, became one of the best, probably the best basketball player ever. We could have an argument about who's the best. So can you see how this is both what drove him to be so fantastic at his craft, at his genius, at his magic? Without that, he wouldn't be Michael Jordan. And can you see how there are things and elements like how was it for him to be in relationships? How was it for his teammates, right? Can you see how there can be another side, right? So part of what we're talking about is just getting the awareness and then moving into, you know, how can you embrace the positives and manage the shadow side? Because the truth is, what I want for all of us is that we can be those trailblazers. We can be those big innovators and like create and do and use this to your advantage. This is your magic. And still, here's my like thesis argument for today: be supported. You can still be supported. Nobody is a self-made millionaire. nobody is an island and is happy about it, I would assure you. That in any case, even if you're Michael Jordan, you do need a team, right? You do need a publicist, you do need a coach, right? Even Michael Jordan could not have been Michael Jordan if it weren't for all of the people that were a part of the teams that he was a part of. Neither can you. And this isn't about saying what you can't do, because I know all y'all know you can freaking do it. This is about how do you embrace the shadow side? How do you deal with where this shadow side pops up? Okay, let me just check the comments and then I'm going to go into, so what do you do? That's the next piece. Let's see. All makes sense. A lot of trauma here. Also a latchkey kid. Yep. A lot of latchkey kids. I love this discussion. Thank you. I love this discussion too. This may become a series. Okay, so what are some ways that this can show up in your business? We started talking about this a little bit, but this is where, again, notice where you find yourself in a tendency to overdo any of these things, or to do these things in a way that doesn't serve you, your clients, your business, your team, your families. Awareness is step one, then we can adjust. A lot of independent people work too many hours. And I think it's sometimes because we just naturally will like, oh, this needs to be done, I'm going to do it. Right. But it doesn't mean, one of the things that I love to work with my clients in is like staying in your lane around what it is that you're setting out to do. And all the superfluous stuff needs to sit there on a back burner list. All the superfluous stuff needs to be delegated to your teammates if you have one. If you don't have a team, I highly recommend that you get one. I don't care what aspect you are in business, you can benefit from having support. And the beauty in running an online business is everybody's a freelancer. So you don't have to hire somebody 40 hours a week. You can specifically agree on a certain number of hours or a certain dollar amount per month that is something that you can manage. Most people I know who have a team, and I just hire new people onto my team. And one of the things that I realized was that it doesn't matter, I think, what you're doing, what phase you are in building your team. Every time you bring a new person on, you're kind of like, oh my God, I should have brought you on sooner. Why didn't I do this for myself sooner? It is such a huge relief. And it's not to say that you don't have to train and get people up to speed, but so oftentimes I like to encourage people to look ahead and to start bringing on team or more team or changing team roles a little bit before you actually need it, so that everybody is up and running and in the new space when you go forward with your next step. So not taking on too much, not leaning on your team or not leaning on your team appropriately, giving your team an opportunity to actually support you is something that I think is really hard for a lot of us. Maybe we're not trusting our team to do it. Maybe we're not trusting our team to do it right. Maybe we're not trusting our team to do it on time, right? Are you a checker-inner? Are you a follow-upper? Hey, I know I gave you that thing to do. Did you do it yet? Right? Handing it off and trusting your team. Where this shows up in our business is all of these things that I'm talking about. It just makes our lives not efficient. It makes our businesses wildly inefficient. You are the genius, the master behind this business. The best way that you can grow and scale and be exactly where you want to be at any given point in time in your business, at any phase, any chapter, whether you just started yesterday or you've been in business for 20 years and you're making millions, the best thing you can do is to stay in your lane and do the things that only you can do and only you should do. I don't like to use the word should, but I'm going to use it here. Only you can, for me, only I can serve my clients. Nobody, I can't delegate that out. I don't want to delegate that out. That's my favorite thing to do. Only I can do these lives, right? And only I should be hopping on and can be hopping on my discovery calls and making sales and putting key points in my marketing plan together and making decisions about what I'm promoting, when, what my pricing is, what my offer is, what that looks like. That's for me. Sales and service and client service, those are my primary focuses. I can delegate pretty much most of the rest of that to whatever degree and extreme that I have budget and time and growth of my team for. This is how you scale, is you ask for support. You have a team, and I'm going to talk about team in a second. So this is how you scale when you're letting this fatal flaw become your fatal flaw, when it slows you down, when it pulls your business growth down, when it wears you out, when it puts you on a path to burnout. These are the kinds of things that can happen and that I see play out all the time when people are like, I love the work I do, but I don't love my business because I'm working too hard, or I'm doing too much, or I don't like this piece and I'm doing it all, right? Doing it all is what so many highly, fiercely independent people are doing. And it's simply not sustainable. It's also not how you scale. But it's also not sustainable. And we are in a space of conscious entrepreneurs and creatives, right? We're in a space, this is a community of people who are doing purpose-driven, mission-driven, really important work. I don't think burnout is an option for us. The world needs your gifts, the world needs your talent, and you don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to do everything yourself. That is a mantra that I say to people all the time. I've had to work on this myself, right? Because what happens is we sometimes think that just because we can do something that we need to do something, right? Okay. So moving into mindset, let me just check the comments. You guys are so great. Okay. Oops. All right. So moving into mindset, a couple of little things. Mindset's hard to speak about on lives, or to take too deep on lives, because everybody's experience is different. And this is not a group coaching environment, but I do want to share a couple tidbits around mindset so that you can start to see where your work might be. As I just said, just because you can do something does not mean you should. Again, I don't like the word should, but I think it's appropriate here. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. To speak to those of you who felt like you have to do it all, right? Because nobody else, I can't trust other people, they won't do it right, or people in my life have been unreliable, so how can I trust somebody in my business to support me? How can I trust somebody in my life to support me? Just because you can doesn't mean you have to do it, right? And I want to give you a couple of other examples, because so often we realize that we actually are getting support in areas that we're not even paying attention to. And starting small is one of my first recommendations of what to do with this. Starting small with like getting the support that you need. A lot of people have somebody clean their house. That's allowing somebody, do you guys know, like the times that I haven't had somebody clean my house and then I moved to found a new person or what have you, and then finally somebody comes to clean my house. It's like the most amazing, most luxurious feeling ever. I can totally clean my house. I'm perfectly capable of cleaning my own house, but I don't want to. And actually there's somebody that cleans my house that does it better than I do. And that frees me up to focus on the parts of my life that I love and enjoy. It frees me up to feel supported. It frees me up to focus on my business. It frees me up to not have to add that one more thing on my calendar. Grocery delivery is another one I was talking to somebody about today, right? If you are a single mom, if you are responsible for whoever you are, if you're responsible for the food in your family, or you're responsible for your own food, can you put that on autopilot and have somebody bring it to you? Right? Or some of it, right? I personally like to pick out my produce, but can somebody deliver the other stuff? Right? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to do it. Where in your life, and this is one of my recommendations, go to your to-do list every week. This is something I ask myself all the time. I look at my to-do list on a Monday and I go, do all of these things need to be done this week and done by me? Do all of these things need to be done by me? Sometimes I realize that I'm actually taking a task away from a teammate, not because I'm going in and taking it, but because I just didn't even realize I just gave myself the to-do. And I forgot and didn't pay attention to the fact that actually that's somebody else's job. Right? And I want to offer the reverse. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to. Just because you delegate something doesn't mean you also can't do it, right? Let's not let this be a commentary on our capabilities. Just because I delegate something out, just because I have a house cleaner doesn't mean that I can't clean my house, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm a prima donna, that I'm a snob, that I'm precious, that I'm above everybody else because I can't clean my own house. That's just not what I do, right? Just because you receive support from someone doesn't mean you are any of those things. And so many people have a really, really hard time. I'll give you a great example. I have been pretty honest about the fact that I injured my neck and kind of my shoulders earlier this summer, and it's something that I'm still dealing with. And one of the things that I was on a call with one of my team members a couple weeks ago, and in that call, we agreed A, B, and C would be done. And I asked them to go into Basecamp, the app that we use to manage all of our tasks and all of our team communications, and there was something that I needed to do. And I just had her go in and assign me a to-do so that I would be reminded to do it, right? Okay, that's kind of like I basically just asked her to write on my to-do list for me. Like I asked her to do it for me, right? And I had a moment where I was like, God, like, you're so pretentious. Who do you think you are? Like, really? You're that much of a snob that somebody needs to write your to-do for you? You can't even do that yourself? No, I can. But one of the things that I'm working on right now is doing the least amount of computer work possible so that my neck and shoulders will heal and I won't be in pain anymore. And so, yeah, I can give myself a to-do in Basecamp, and I asked a teammate to do it, and then I a little bit apologized for it, right? This is where we sort of go in and out of these moments, but asking for help is really important. And it was something that it was a really smart decision, right? It was a really smart decision. I would have coached my own clients around something like that, but it's really hard to do yourself when you're independent, right? Because I don't want to be that kind of boss. I don't want to be that kind of person that's like, can you get me a glass of water? No, I want the Evian, not the blah, 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 right? But you're not being that, right? And the truth is, when you do all of those things that you could be asking for help from someone, whether it's a team member, a family member, whatever it is in any aspect of your life and business, then you're kind of becoming a martyr. And I'm sorry to tell you that martyrdom leads to burnout. It just does. And I'm here to protect you from burnout because it's not an option. Okay, so what do we do? Here's a couple of other examples. I'm just going to check the comments. Michelle says, I had someone clean my house. Then when I started working from my house, I let go because I felt weird about it. Right now, I see the need for this type of support. Yeah, and I also have a history of back issues. My back does great now, but I'm not going to put myself, I can clean my house and bend over and do all the sweeping and all the mopping and all the baseboard cleaning. I can do it, and I choose to save my back, right? I choose not to. And I choose to be supported in that way. Okay. Great story to tell. I have a hard time asking for help. Allison says I'm terrible at asking and receiving help. And that's the last piece here that I want to talk about. So what can you do? Shifting to trusting others, shifting to, by the way, cut yourself a break. Oh my God, like it takes a lot for most of us to run our own business. I don't care if you also then have family, relationships, friendships, pets, whatever else you have going on in your life. It feels really good to cut yourself a break and say, it's okay, honey, you don't have to clean the house too. right? It's okay to let go of that control. Maybe my house cleaner, oftentimes she does a much better job than I do, but maybe she doesn't do something exactly the way that I would want it. Can I let that go? This is about asking for help, allowing that help in, and then letting go. Because so often what happens is when we don't do any of those things, especially when we don't let go, then we still have an open tab, right? In an open window on our computer of a brain that's like, oh, I need to worry about this. I wonder if the house got cleaned. Right? It's not your responsibility to do anymore. The person that is responsible for cleaning your house will clean your house. So if you have a team, if you don't have a team, get one. Start small. If you have a team, look at your to-do list every day and start to notice where you can delegate more. I guarantee you the investment is always worth it. Always. It doesn't mean that you need to like hire 8 people right now and put together 9 new projects, right? Do it incrementally, but allow yourself to be supported. If you have a team, regularly review what's going on in your team. What skills are available to you? Where can you use those skills more? What skills are not available to you on your team? And do you need those skills now based on what you're doing? Would it be easier to implement all the things you want to do if you had somebody with this X type of skill? Refreshing your team, and I don't mean like cleaning house, but I just mean refreshing and revisiting what's happening on your team. It's one of my favorite things to do with my clients, because it's one of the few things that I've brought back in from my corporate world. I used to do that with my roles, responsibilities, how to organize and structure a team, who to hire first, second, third, how to manage a team, what's going on with your leadership. I freaking love that. But refreshing your team situation going forward every now and then, and making sure that like you have the right skill set, right? So there's something that you're doing that you really probably should outsource. And then let go and let them prove to you that you can be trusted, that they can be trusted. And that's part of what happens with us is we aren't good at asking for help. And when we do get help, right? How many of you are like, yeah, but can you help me this way? Can you do it my way? No. Oh, don't do it that way. Can you just do it this way? Right? Let go of the micromanaging. Start small, start small, start small. And then when you do pass something off to a team member, when you do delegate your house cleaning, whatever it is, taking a moment to intentionally let go and like physically and emotionally and energetically give them the task or the project. Of course, train them and get them up to speed, but let them come to you for questions. Be available to be supportive. Ask to be able to review something before it goes out, but trust your team. This is a process. This isn't easy, but trust your team to support you and actually to prove you wrong that you can't be supported. The only way to get the support that you need is to take a leap of faith and to ask someone to support you. And I think the asking is one of the things that people do only when they get to a really painful point sometimes. But it's asking for help, noticing where you can ask for help more, right? That's why I like to look at that to-do list at the beginning of the week. Where could I ask for help? What needs to be shifted to next week because it ain't happening this week? Is this to-do list really all that needs to be done by me? Where could I ask for help? And what you'll also find is over the course of a few weeks or a few months, you'll be like, this same thing that I'm doing every week really doesn't have to be done by me, but I don't have anybody on my team that makes sense to do this. So maybe I need to hire someone else, right? That's one of the ways that you start to notice. For me, I started to notice certain things that I was holding on to that I didn't want to do anymore that was wearing me out. And so I've got a new team member starting in 2 weeks to help me with this. So ask, allow the support in, and then let go. And I'm here to tell you guys, like, it can be a huge relief. It is a huge act of self-care to ask someone to help you and then to allow them to help you, to let go and be supported, right? And then another way that you might do this, and when I say team too, I don't just mean team, like we all hire other, there's like team, but then there's like experts and other people like accountants or whoever that you hire also to support you. Like, be open to the fact that even though one of my favorite things to preach is running your business on your own terms, and doing it your way and doing it in a way that feels good to you, that's really important. And that doesn't mean that we don't also ask for outside opinions, that we don't get expert advice in certain areas to help elevate us. Like, let's not pretend like we know everything, right? Asking for different viewpoints. And then again, one of the things that I think is really helpful in this area is, where are you already being supported? And is there a way to lean into that more? So like I guess, if you have a team, where can you lean on your team for more support? I bet you they're like chomping at the bit to help you more if you just let them, right? Or if you don't have a team, or if you're having a hard time with this concept, like where in your life and your business are you already getting the support you need? And maybe you're not even recognizing it. One of the things that I find to be helpful is when I go to get a massage, to just like really lean into and relax into the fact that like, I'm being so supported right now. This is so luxurious. Even if I usually go to massage because I have pain, but like, even if I'm going to alleviate something, it's like somebody's taking care of me for an hour. Can I lean into that energy of being cared for, being taken care of, being supported by the table that I'm lying on, being supported by the beautiful practitioner that's taking care of my muscles. I'm not doing anything differently on the surface, but it's leaning into that mindset and the energy of being supported, of feeling supported. Oh, it feels so good when I come home and somebody's cleaned my house for me. Oh, thank you so much. That's so wonderful. Right? Leaning into more of what you want, noticing where you're already doing it, I think is one of the easiest ways. And then to start to find baby steps to lean in. Maybe you don't feel comfortable asking for help in your business, but maybe you feel comfortable asking for somebody who's already helping you. Maybe your cleaning person can also do the gardening. I don't know, right? But like, maybe there's a way to expand little baby steps by little baby steps in that area. And then the other thing I want to say is, when I'm running over time. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute. When I'm working on a new mindset, or when one of my clients is working on shifting their mindset, one of the things that I think is really helpful, again, notice where you're already doing it, celebrate yourself for that, and lean into it even more. But when you're also wanting to call that in, like, again, I set out 2 years ago to really work on allowing in support, allowing in more community, allowing in more of that for myself. If you want to attract more of that, if you want to really dial that in, one of the things that I like to do, this is so simple, is find the gratitude for what you already have. I love to thank my team members because I'm so, so grateful for what they do. And it's really important to me that I'm appreciative, not because I'm indebted to them, not because I did something wrong, but because I find gratitude to be a way to sort of keep calling in what you want, right? And to make sure that other people feel appreciated, because that's something that I think a lot of people don't feel. But also, you don't have to do it directly. You can, be grateful. Like, while I'm laying down in the massage table, I can be grateful. Oh, thank you. This is so wonderful. I have so much gratitude for how I'm being taken care of right now. That can just be going on in my mind, right? I don't have to say it to my beautiful body worker. And then the other thing is, when you're paying someone for their services, what's the energy of that? What's going on for you? Like, one of the things that I noticed when I worked with my current business coach, when I first started paying her, it felt like a lot of money. And I was like, oh, here's my money. Okay, that was a lot of money, right? But very shortly after that, I noticed that when I went to pay her, it was like I'm so pleased and joyful and happy to pay her. I want her to have this money because she's made such a difference in my life and my business. And she is the perfect person to be supporting me right now. And I love feeling supported by her. And maybe I don't in every week that I meet with her, maybe I don't need her, but it feels really good to have her. It feels really good to have a support system in my business. And I adore my work with her, and it's just the greatest thing. And it makes me feel so good. And I love how I'm supported, and I can ask for help of her because I'm paying her to help me, right? All these things has been a really beautiful growth opportunity for me. And I notice that now when I pay her, I'm like, thank you. This is so great. Like, I'm happy to give you this money. And the money doesn't feel, it's just, I want her to have it, right? So can you find those moments where whatever it is, if it's a payment or if it's a thank you, or if it's a thank you in your head, or if it's a gratitude in your head, where can you open up more to dialing that in, to being really and that's about allowing, that's about letting go, that's about receiving. And then it makes it easier to ask for help, which is the first step in the process. Yes, there are those amazing people in the world who will notice what you need and say, hey, can I help you with this? Right? But that doesn't always happen. And fortunately slash unfortunately, we have to ask for help ourselves. So, okay, I feel that I could keep going on and on and on, but I'm going to close it here. Please let me know how you resonated with this. Where does independence play out for you in your business? Where does asking for help, getting the support you need, and frankly, getting the right support, right? It's not about getting a team. It's about getting the right team members and the right team skills to support you in your business where you are right now. Or the right cleaning person, or whatever it is that you need, the right romantic partner to support you. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's one of the things that I work with my clients around so often, because you don't have to be like me to be one of my coachees, but it's just one of those things that I can spot from a mile away. And I know these dynamics and I know these patterns really well because I've lived them and worked them myself. And it's one of my favorite things to help my clients with. If that's you and you're interested in working with me, I'm mostly booking out for starting in January, but I do have one slot left if you want to start this year. So if that's of interest, hop on a call with me. I'll put the link here in the chat. And I'd love to talk about, maybe you could ask me for help. I'd love to talk about how I could support you in your business. And I think one more thing around, and again, where are you already getting coach? Where are you already getting help? Do you have a coach, right? Where are you already getting help? Is there something, sorry, I have a tangent. Is there something that you do for other people that you need support in as well, right? I think a lot of coaches have coaches. I'm a huge fan of that. But like, if you're an accountant, does somebody else do your taxes, or do you do your own and you do them last? Right? Where can you get any level of support that would support you? And I think that's one of the things that I've been working with some of my clients on, where you don't need to have a huge problem in order to benefit from coaching. Coaching can be around a problem, can be around a crisis time, or I really want to work on X right now, and we dive in and we do that. But one of the things that I find, and this is why I work with my clients for a minimum of 5 months, is that coaching really takes place in the long term. When you have support over the long term, then you have those moments where you can just, maybe you don't need help, but it's really beautiful to have that help and support to process through things, to be a brainstorming partner behind the scenes. That's what I use one of the things I use my business coach for, is to just go, okay, I want to think this through, and then I want to think it through with her, and then I want to finalize it. Because it's just so much better. 2 heads are better than one. And I think, again, when we're talking about asking for help and allowing support in, just because you could do it by yourself, why do you want to? Right? I'm not, going to do your business for you. But if you're interested in having support, that's one of my favorite things to offer and provide to my clients, just what I do. But it's also really beautiful when I get to do it in the space of somebody recognizing that they just want to give themselves this. They just want to give themselves this support. because it's nice, because it feels good, because it makes running a business so much easier, and running a business is hard enough by yourself. And that's the final thing I want to say to you is you don't have to do it all by yourself. Whether it's hiring a coach, hiring some other teammate, hiring an expert, asking your husband for help, getting a cleaning person, whatever it is, you don't have to do it all by yourself. And you may be conditioned to think that you have to do it all by yourself, but you don't. So I'll leave you with that. I'm sending you guys so much love. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. And I will see you next Wednesday for another live.